We are less than 3 weeks away from NFL free agency being kicked off, and we are already seeing teams across the National Football League start to cut some players to add to their salary cap space. That way they can be bigger buyers in the market. You're watching Giants Now by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Marshall Green, and on today's video, we're going to go over the biggest cut candidates for the Giants. We're looking at players that may not be needed on this team anymore and people that, if cut, will boost up the Giants' salary cap number. And before we get into it, this isn't the 2022 Giants. This isn't the 2023 or 2024 Giants. The Dave Gettleman mess has been cleaned up. And there are a lot of things that you could really critique and criticize Joe Schoen for. But the one thing he has done well, outside of the Daniel Jones contract, is making sure there are no bad deals on the books. It was hard to find quality cut candidates for this football team. And to be honest with you, I only found 3 of them, and I think only 2 of them really make a lot of sense. Let's start with this one. Graham Gano, the veteran kicker for the New York Giants. The 38-year-old has just simply not been available enough over the last 2 years to be a player that you can keep on this roster. When you look at his contract info and you talk about how much would the Giants save, how much would they eat in cap, if he is released prior to June 1st, he would have a dead cap charge of $2.5 million, but you would save $3.1 million. If you release him after June 1st, you would have a dead cap charge of $1.25 million for 2025 and 2026, but instead of saving $3.1 million, you save $4.4 million. And this is a move that I do think the Giants will make, and they should absolutely make. When you only play the number of games that Gano has over the last 2 years, that's going to bring into question if you should still be on this roster. But more importantly, he just hasn't been that good of a field goal kicker for this team. He has attempted 28 field goals over the last 2 years, and he is 20 of 28. He has missed 8 kicks, and he has missed some big kicks for this team, and he's missed games as well. Of the 34 games over the last 2 seasons, Gano has just appeared in 18 of them. So when you talk about a guy that has really, I feel like, fallen off a little bit of a cliff as a kicker because he was money when he got to this team a couple of years ago, and you pair that on top of he's played in 50% of the games over the last 2 years, and he's going to be 38 years old when the season starts, and he has a cap hit of almost $5+ million going into 2025. It seems like an easy decision for the New York Giants to make. It simply comes down to this. You need a more reliable kicker than Graham Gano. You can't afford to pay a kicker big money, them always be hurt, they don't make a lot of field goals, and they're going to be 38 years old. You don't want to continue to employ a person like that. Nothing against Graham Gano as a person, but I'm trying to increase the salary cap number for the Giants so they can go out and sign legit players out there to improve this roster. And I think you can get a kicker that's done just as much as Gano has over the last 2 years for a fraction of the price. From special teams to defense, let's talk about an interior defensive lineman. My guy Nacho, Rakeem Nunez-Roches. He just finished his 2nd season for the Giants, joining this team 2 off seasons ago, coming over from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And at this point, the production just doesn't meet the price point for Rakeem Nunez-Roches. If you release him prior to June 1st, you save $3.6 million while having a dead cap charge of just $1.4 million. And I think that he would be a pre-June 1 release, whereas where we talked about Gano, it could be either or, pre or post. With Nunez-Roches, it makes no sense to wait until post 6-1. Remember, if you cut a player after June 1st, you don't get that salary cap juice until June 1st gets here. And if the Giants are going to cut him, they're going to want to use that $3.6 million to A, maybe find his replacement, or B, add some talent at another position of need. I'm not going to say I had huge expectations for Rakeem Nunez-Roches when he came here, but I feel like he did fall short of those expectations. He was talked about as being a pivotal piece to that Tampa Bay Buccaneers defensive line that won a Super Bowl. And in the 2 years that he played here, over 30 games, I just never really saw that pass rush juice, and I felt like he got moved off his spot and wasn't nearly good enough in the run game to make an impact. The Giants were one of the worst run defenses in the National Football League this past year, and I think that Rakeem Nunez-Roches was the reason for that. He played a lot, but unfortunately he didn't play all that well. Just 52 tackles. 52 tackles is a solid number this year, but just 2 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 12 stops, and just 7 pressures. Last year he had 19 stops and he had 1 tackle for loss. So the numbers don't really pop off the page. And when you pair that with the numbers not being great, the PFF grades weren't great, and they weren't kind to Rakeem Nunez-Roches either. His overall grade of 46.8, that ranked 170th out of 219 defensive tackles. His pass rush grade, 53.1, 183rd out of 219 DTs. And his run defense grade, which I was really disappointed with, 50.2, 124 out of 219 defensive tackles. At the end of the day, you just need a better player next to Dexter Lawrence in the run game. I know there's been a lot of talk about the Giants going out and spending big on one of these interior pass rushers at that defensive tackle spot. And I don't have a major problem with that, but I think at the end of the day, you need more of a run defender there, a guy that can take on multiple blocks, that can eat up blocks at the line of scrimmage and make plays behind the line, and allowing Dexter Lawrence to see more one-on-one pass rush snaps, but also one-on-one blocking opportunities in the run game. We know Dexter is great at getting after the quarterback, but I think there's another level he can tap into as a run defender if some of the weight and the burden is taken off his shoulders. I'm not going to be upset if the Giants keep Rakeem Nunez-Roches. I will be upset, though, if he is their starting D tackle in week 1. Go spend bigger there. Go get a better player and continue to add depth to this team. We're going to talk about one more cut candidate coming up in a second. Guy, it's not getting cut, though, is Malik Nabers. Get his jersey today. Go to chatsports.com/neighbors. That is chatsports.com/neighbors. I will make sure that link is clickable down in the comments and description of today's video. All right, the last player that I wanted to talk about as a cut candidate for the New York Giants, I know is going to be a controversial player. But this is someone that was talked about as a cut candidate last year. And when you just look at the numbers and you pair that with the information we kind of know, I think Daniel Bellinger is a player that is at minimum, not saying he's going to get cut, but at minimum is going to find himself on the bubble for this team. Maybe they hold on to Bellinger throughout the offseason and he becomes a roster cut down guy. But man, there's just not a lot of cut candidates for this team. And if you release Bellinger entering his 4th year, you save $3.2 million. And while that's not like a huge amount of money for any player, we are talking about marginal cap increases here. And with a dead cap charge of less than $200,000 and you saving $3.2 million, and he has a cap hit at 3.4, do you really want to pay tight end number 3? Tight end number 4, $3.4 million. That's a decision Joe Schoen's going to have to make. I go back to last year when we talked about Bellinger being a cut candidate. Multiple Giants insiders and beat reporters hinted at it through their reporting. Fast forward to where we are now, we're kind of in the same boat. The Bellinger career and saga with the Giants really does not make sense at all. His best year was his rookie year. Then his sophomore season, the production started to decline. They made that trade for Darren Waller in the offseason. And then this past year, he was just not a part of the Giants formula. 14 catches, played in every single game, only 125 yards per game. Like, you pair the usage with the numbers and the fact that he was a 2024 cap cut candidate, you find yourself in that boat again. And I would be absolutely okay. I would be perfectly content if Bellinger was still on this team. I think he has more to give the game than the Giants have allowed him to do over the last 2 years. I still think about the player that was productive for the Giants in his rookie year prior to breaking his face. But when he came back from that, it just wasn't the same guy. And really the snap count that he got severely decreased. Think about it like this. In his rookie year, he played in 12 games, missing 5 of them due to that facial fracture. Played in 675 snaps. The very next year, he played in 5 more games, but only added 14 snaps to the snap total. And then this year, played in every game, and he played in just 364 snaps, almost cutting in half his prior year and his snap count total. I would be okay if the Giants keep Bellinger. I don't think $3.4 million is too much for a backup tight end. But at the end of the day, like we talked about, Joe Shane, got to give him credit. Salary cap books are clean. Has only given out one horrible contract in Daniel Jones. And right now, the cap books are looking clean as a whistle, especially for the offseason of 2026. So we got 3 cut candidates for the Giants. Graham Gano, Rakeem Nunez-Roches, and Daniel Bellinger. If you do end up cutting all 3 of these players, you add $10.1 million to your salary cap total while only taking on a dead cap charge of $4.13 million. That would bring the Giants all the way up to $53.4 million in cap space with 47 players on the roster. So when you talk about their top 51 cap space, their effective cap space, they are going to have plenty of it if they make these cuts. And I think it could happen. If you made it this far in the video, I wanted to give you a bonus player as well to keep your eyes on. Not so much for the cap, but maybe just moving on. And I think we could be reaching the end of the Tommy DeVito era with the New York Giants. Do they trust him to be QB2 for a rookie? Do they trust him to be QB3 for a rookie? Better question might be, does he want to be QB3 and on the practice squad for the Giants? That's going to be something to pay attention to, and we'll talk about that more as the offseason progresses. But if you're ready for NFL free agency to start, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm ready. I'm tired of talking about these players. I want to know who's on my football team. If you're with me, hit that thumbs up icon and make sure you are following me on social media. That's the first spot you're going to hear about any Giants news and rumors. I'm on Instagram at @MarshallGreen_, and I'm on X at @MarshallGreen_. Same handle on both platforms. Hit me up over there, and let's go Big Blue.